Ian, I've heard through the grapevine that you're doing another Geeky Gentleman on Magic. You're having me on, right?
Oh, hey, Maxwell. No, man, actually, this week's video is about, like, fantasy versus sci-fi, not like stage magic.
Oh, what? Well, I'm really a sorcerer, you know? I do spells, wizardry, and witchcraft.
You're really looking for subscribers, aren't you?
I am this close to 100 subscribers. I would love to hit that mark this week. So I'm doing everything I can to be on this show.
Nah, man, sorry, we're really packed up this week. I'm gonna have to pass on you. I'm sorry, bud.
Okay then, I'll see you later.
All right, thanks for understanding, man.
Traguna, Maquates, Tracorum, Satus D.
Mother. Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things. Hi everyone, I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Melanjeftic1992 and Esplin227. Hi gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
What's up?
I have a son on the way.
Okay then. Anyway, if you could hear what was going on before the fade out, then you have serious issues to deal with, as do I. That require years and years of therapy that neither of us has the money to afford. Anyway, so everyone, this week on Geeky Gentlemen, we are going to be discussing science versus magic. And first of all, let me say before we go on, thanks to Maxwell for helping out with that intro video. That was a lot of fun. I have a headache now. These two don't know what I'm talking about, but you, the viewer, does. So congratulations there. Anyway, no, so what we're going to be talking about, the video is going to be called Science versus Magic because that's just a cool fucking title, as opposed to sci-fi versus fantasy, which is what we're actually going to be discussing. So, before we really get into the topic here, I figured we should go round the table here and see who's into what. Let's start with Milan.
Yeah.
Which one do you find yourself leaning more towards, science fiction or fantasy?
With me, they kind of go around in circles. At some point in the month or the year, or I just get interested into science fiction. I've been really interested in like spaceships and weird and larger than life cosmic concepts that have some basis in reality. Hooray! And then other times I'm like fantasy and swords and sorcery and black magic and dark gods. And so it kind of goes in phases for me.
Okay, Alec, I'm gonna take a stab in the dark here. You know, forgive me for presuming, but I'm gonna say that you're, you know, a pretty big sci-fi guy.
Not only am I a big sci-fi guy, but when I see something that's magical but not too magical like Harry Potter, something that, you know, like powers, my mind automatically comes up with scientific ways that it may be ancient technology they don't know about. Like, my mind literally will not let me accept fantasy 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like clearly in the sci-fi camp.
And for myself, I lean more towards sci-fi, and I think it's less about like believability for me. For me, I lean more towards sci-fi because it tends to have the more interesting plots that tend to deal more with, you know, my preferences for social or moral criticism, you know, metaphorical context. That's what I'm interested in. A lot of sci-fi deals with that, and fantasy is usually more character-focused stuff. It usually revolves around that same trope of being on a quest to get something or go somewhere. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can do some really great character stuff and do some really cool world building and mythology in that. But I definitely lean more towards sci-fi though.
Another thing you mentioned about the plot. Sorry, let me just say this. Even if we're talking about fantasy that's, I'm going to use a weird example, but Charmed. You ever seen Charmed?
Nope. Actually, hold on. Before you go, I never get the chance to tell this story. It's the creepiest fucking thing in the world. So when I was in high school, I sat next to this girl in class, and I always saw her writing in this fucking notebook. And it was never notes. You could tell it wasn't notes because she'd write in it during like movies and shit in class. And one day, I decided, fuck it, because I was bored, and I really wish I hadn't done this. I asked her, what are you always writing in there? And she goes, oh, my friend and I are really big fans of the show Charmed, so we write a lot of, I guess you'd call it fan fiction about ourselves as characters on the show. Like, why wouldn't I call it fan fiction? Well, honestly, I think I'm actually the character that those girls are based off of.
Oh, dear God.
Oh, God, that's so fucking creepy.
Oh.
Oh, you psycho bitch.
The funny thing, that is one of those. That is one of the warning signs that you know your mind is slowly unraveling. When you think you are the characters in fiction.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even good fiction. It's fucking Charmed.
Yeah, it's not good fiction. That's why I guess it's an unfair example for what I'm about to say. But convoluted mythologies that have to get increasingly more convoluted for the plot to become interesting. That's the problem I have with fantasy. It's I'm gonna use another example, and it might be actually it's not a spoiler, but basically, Shinji in Evangelion was in a place of no boundaries, a place where anything you imagine is true, and basically he says. They say, do you like it here? And he says, well, no, there's nothing. There could be anything, but they're like, without boundaries, you have no direction. And that's kind of what I feel about a lot of fantasy. A lot of it, not the deeper, not the better ones, like everyone agrees that Lord of the Rings is unequivocally good. Like, it's just objectively good. Some people don't like it, but even the people who don't like it are just like, I'm not into it. With the exception of things like that and the well-thought-out Harry Potter, fantasy just... It's not just that sci-fi is grounded in something scientific. It seems to be grounded in at least trying to make sense from a narrative perspective. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It does have the problem of having aliens who are sometimes just characteristically evil, but it's less likely to do that than fantasy. You know what I mean? It's more likely to have, and a lot more anti-heroes come from sci-fi, and I'm with the Amazing Atheist on this. I don't like the term anti-hero. An anti-hero is just basically a hero who's actually interesting. You know what I mean? Like,
come on.
I'm sorry, but who is not an anti-hero? Who
Captain America.
Besides Captain America and Superman. Other than those two. And, okay, they're not interesting. They're great heroes.
Oh, come on. The Captain America movie was good.
That was an excellent movie. But the character...
Yeah, I mean, it's based on something, isn't it?
Yeah. No, like I said, he's not boring, but
it's not
really
boring. I think it's a very simple character. It's just like, I am not a bastard. I mean, like with most.
Well, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really The thing with heroes, with goody two shoes guys. See, if you have a bastard for a hero, and if he does something rather heroic, that good stuff kind of shines. It's like, oh, he's a guy with a rough exterior, but he did something great. But if you have
like Spider Jerusalem,
and but if you got like a goody two shoes guy like Superman or Captain America,
it's just like he's always doing the right thing.
Yeah, but,
God damn.
But when he does something wrong or something vaguely, like morally ambiguous, then you're like, oh, he's not as perfect as everyone thought he was.
Yeah, well, another problem I have is moral. A lot of times they like perfect heroes, or I don't know, because the definition of anti-hero is different. Like, we might be using a different definition. I'm leaning more towards the anti-hero is not a complete bastard. You know what I mean? Like, God, my mind went blank. It does that whenever I'm trying to think of anything complex, and we're being recorded. Who's a good example?
Sorry about that. I'll give you a second to think. I see where you're going, though. It seems that
hold on,
fantasy
I have something.
leads a lot more on tropes. Go ahead, Noah.
The thing about fantasy is that Alex said something that I kind of agree with. That most fantasy kind of makes up rules of its very own, and it kind of becomes kind of semi-detached from reality. Like with Harry Potter, just like, how does this work? How do you can just conjure something?
Harry Potter's okay because it's consistent when it's with its own.
Yeah,
they don't.
I understand that, but with me, with magic like that, it's always fun. I don't know, my mind kind of goes to a place of like, this is something. There is logic behind this, but logic that I can't understand. So it kind of, it's a subconscious thing of me just trying to make sense of this stuff. That should sound silly, of like, I'm going to conjure up a stretcher out of thin air. My mind kind of goes like, oh, there's some sort of weird quantum rules or something. Something quantum.
Yeah, exactly. Like, basically, I just imagine it's like a Q entity. Or here's a better example of it. There's an anime called Scrapped Princess, and I'm going to spoil it, but it gets spoiled halfway through. The anime is set in a fantasy world, and basically it ends up being like the Matrix. Those are just the programmed rules of their world. And they end up finding... Imagine the Matrix movie, but set in Tolkienist, like Tolkienist fantasy. And
interesting.
At the end, they find out that what they're actually doing is basically a debug code. When they're summoning stuff, it's almost like a cheat code. They're breaking the system. When they're doing magic, they're basically pulling a Neo. That's not what I imagine. Like Harry Potter, when J.K. Rowling expanded the universe, she expanded it within the bounds she created. She made an effort to make the storylines connect and to realistically, and yeah, I say realistically even when talking about Harry Potter. Believably, yeah, thank you, that's a better word. Flesh out the characters and make them complex and actually... for instance, she didn't... Here's what a lot of other fantasy does. Imagine Harry Potter and they kill Voldemort, but they're super Voldemort. And they have the Council of...
She's got like horns and shit.
Yeah, they have the Council of Wizards, or I don't know what they have in Harry Potter.
Order of the Phoenix.
Sorry. My dad told me to quiet down. My bad. They have like their wizards, right? Their order or whatever the leaders are. But it turns out there's a higher power, a higher council, and that council even tells them what to do. Like, and it never stops with. But Tolkien didn't, or not Tolkien, J.K. Rowling didn't do that. That's why I like Harry Potter. I mean, I haven't read the books. I've seen the movies. I thought it was a great series. It's internally consistent. I like that.
And for me, I see where you're coming from with that. That is a problem I've always had, but it's a weird problem to have with fiction when you really think about it. Like, basically the complaint against fantasy is, I don't like that you can do anything. But with fiction, you can do anything you really want to. It's one of those weird things. I mean, and that actually gets us into somewhere that I think we have to go. With what is the difference between fantasy and science fantasy?
Because I think with science fantasy, kind of, borders the line of magical realism. Because it's just like, hey, this is science, but it is, I promise. And here's this weird, unexplainable thing. Well, we're not going to say it's magic, but yeah, it's a thing that happened.
Well,
Like, I mean, you look at like the Force.
Well, yeah, look at the Force as opposed to, say, the magic in Harry Potter. The Force has some basic levels of explanation. There's a limit to what you can do with the Force. All of those things, if you had, I'm not saying it's based on technology, but if you had advanced enough technology, they're conceivably possible. For instance, with the Force, you can't conjure
fire to just... Well, you can conjure lightning.
Yeah, you can conjure fire because it's the motion of molecules. Fire is a chemical reaction that is simply the friction of molecules.
Come on, don't count metachlorians, come on.
Wait.
Don't do that. Don't bring metachlorians into this.
Not metachlorians. But here's the thing that I find interesting. I was going to make a thing when I first heard about metachlorians about who's more sci-fi or who's more fantasy, is whether you hate metachlorians. But then I realized everyone I talked to hated metachlorians. Here's why metachlorians didn't bother me. Because just like everything else in Star Wars, when I thought about what the difference between a Force-sensitive person is and a regular person, because remember, the Force is not like Taoism. In Taoism, everyone should be able to train enough to be able to do that. I mean, in our real world, we know that crap's not real. But everyone should be able to use Chi at some point. Whereas in the Star Wars universe, it would be internally inconsistent for them to do that. The metachlorian thing, look, the metachlorians is not what the Force is. The Force is an all-powerful, omnipresent energy field that is in everything, living and non-living. Midichlorians just dictates how sensitive you are to it. And that's what...
So, like, are Jedi just fucking with the strings? Is that what's going on here? Are Jedi just able to fuck with the strings, just play Puppet Master with strings?
I don't know. I never really thought of it like that. It's more... It seems more like just another energy field. You know, like...
Fair enough. I don't know, I always thought that the metachlorians were such a weak attempt by George Lucas to ground the Force in science in some way.
Well, I thought it was more a explanation as to why some people could use the Force and some people can't. Because there is no... Before midichlorians, there is no rational reason why someone else can't learn to use the Force. Why can some people do it when they've already stated that the Force is in everything? It doesn't make sense for someone to have more of the Force in them. What does that even mean? If it's an omnipresent energy field, now some people are like siphons or focals of the Force. But I don't know. Even some of those people can't use the Force because they don't have the connection to it. Basically, it's just the thing that connects the field to people. Kind of like what mind-brain dualists believe, where they believe that our soul, that the brain is just a thing that connects the soul to the body.
Yeah.
That's basically what the Chlorians are. So
I guess. I don't know. I just always thought they were a really weak-ass explanation. You're not going to convince me otherwise.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
The thing with the...
Hold up, let me say one more.
Alec, let Milan go for a second.
Let Alec finish, because then he'll just forget his point.
Yeah, just let me finish, because what's interesting is the problem you have with midichlorians is actually not the problem everyone else has. Everyone else was mad, not because it was a weak explanation, but because he tried to ground it in science. Because for them, the Force was always this mysterious, magical thing. They didn't care that it was a weak explanation. You're the first person I've ever heard that's their grievance. Their grievance was that he ever tried to ground it in science at all. They wanted it to be basically magic, like pure magic. That the Force... Yeah. See, at least you're closer to how I think in terms of that, because...
Okay.
Damn it.
What do you want to say?
Damn it, Alec, you you basically said my thing that I was gonna say. That yes, yeah, because everyone didn't really bother with the whole like, oh, this is not a good enough explanation. Everyone basically, people want there to be some sort of magic. I think, even in a sci-fi type of thing, some people who aren't really fans of sci-fi / fantasy, like hardcore fans, they want there to be some sort of unexplainable force that would give them the fantasy of just like, I can do this thing, yeah. And then when you explain that there's no real, like, even if you fail to explain how this one thing works, they just gonna feel like that kid that find out Santa isn't real. It's like, but Santa.
What?
Yeah,
Spoiler alert. Remind me of I Am Legend when you finish talking.
And that's it. I mean,
okay.
Oh,
I'm done.
I'm sorry. I thought you were. Okay. What you just
well,
said.
actually, Alex, before we go on, can I respond to Milan's
Oh
point?
yeah.
I agree with you. There is that kind of element of just, no, I want magic and science in a lot of things. It's weird. Even Stephen King does it to a certain extent. A lot of his stuff is more supernaturally, fantasy-based, but then he'll do stuff that's like, kind of like a more scientific horror kind of thing. And it's weird. He kind of wants it both ways. I think King leans more towards fantasy himself. I'm trying to remember the name. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but there's like this line where he made a really big deal out of people of science not wanting to accept there's magic. So that's one of the interesting things I think we'll have to get into as well, is that in fantasy that's like not like sword and shield kind of fantasy, but like, more supernatural elements that are set in contemporary or in future, is something to talk about, is this idea that they have that their fantasy has to disprove science to work, kind of thing.
Exactly.
And
that's
I
a really
hate that. I was just.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say that. That reminds
actually
me.
Sorry. It's just a. Sorry. I just want to get my point. It's just that's a really good, interesting topic. Well, we should not forget it, because it's a really interesting thing I want to talk about. But that's the thing. I mean, most people want there to be like, oh, we want it both ways. But that's the thing. I mean, you really can't, because if you're gonna have magic and the scientific method, those two dogs can't be in the same ballpark. I mean, yeah.
All right, this whole issue brings me to a thing that I hate, that they have to disprove science. You're right about that, and that's actually what I was going to say. I call it the magical knife twisting, where not only do we have to accept that there's magic, but they have to twist it almost. It's like they also have to throw in that little thing that if you don't believe, then you're just stupid. Like, I Am Legend. This drove me crazy. She's like, well, this is all part of God's plan, she says to him. Have you guys seen I Am Legend? Because this is going to...
Yeah.
I've
okay,
seen the
good.
movie, yeah.
All right. And something about a butterfly or whatever. And then by the end of the show, when they're banging on that glass, he sees that butterfly in the glass. And surely that means this was all God's plan. Oh, that's so fucking annoying. It's like,
yeah.
I hate that
It's like,
shit so much.
Yeah, they have to pay lip
It was
service.
God's plan. We tried to cure cancer. It was a mistake. It mutated. He made a sacrifice for the human race. Why do you gotta throw that stupid magical fairy tale bullshit in there? Oh my god. I'm sorry, but I hate it so much. And
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
the thing.
mind it if it's already established.
Alec, you're an animal hate abuser. If you do not cry when Will Smith kills his dog, then you are not human.
That was really intense. Like I said, it was a wonderful movie up until that point, and now it's just a pretty good movie. Because that bothered me so much. To me, that undermines the feeling of loneliness throughout the whole. And I know for everyone else, you know what? It's because it's a Hollywood movie. It has to be uplifting at the end. Also magic. That's how I feel about a lot of. It's like blah 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 is the plot. Also magic. It's like no.
The thing about I Am Legend is that it was fascinating to see Will Smith play an atheist essentially, because
Okay, anyway, it was weird to see Will Smith play an atheist because he is a very religious person.
Isn't he Scientologist?
Yeah, he's
no.
Scientologist. Yes, he is.
He is?
Yeah. In fact,
I didn't know that.
Son
I thought he
said,
wasn't.
When his son was going to be in After Earth, he said, "I like aliens because they're real," or "I like aliens. I like sci-fi because aliens are real and something like they're in us." And I like to play things like he's basically raised his kid as a Scientologist. It's like, you're all stupid. You're stupid. I end up feeling like an anti-theist, but I'm really not aggressively an anti-theist. It's just I'm not an anti-theist until they start talking.
What's the difference between Scientology and fantasy? No, anyway.
The thing with that is it's interesting because I really like those scenes where basically the woman, the Hispanic lady that he saved, basically this is all part of God's plan, and he's like, and Wilson like, oh, everyone is fucking dead.
Yeah.
Why?
Millions.
What? Millions are dead.
What did you say? Like 6 billion men, women, and children died horrible deaths. That was part of God's plan, and at the end, that was totally part of God's plan. We're supposed to be okay with that.
That's the thing. I don't like.
Right. Okay. Let's get off I Am Legend. Otherwise, you two are just gonna start ranting about atheism.
No. I
just hate that in movies. Really, I understand that people.
But like, let's talk more generally about like this kind of disproving sets, because it happens a lot in horror movies where it happens in H.P. Lovecraft, Milan. You had I've been listening to The Color Out of Space over and over again because I'm going to do a paper on it. The scientists, like, observe this meteor like fucking crazy, and they can't find anything that makes it part of any other element. And then it all disappears, and then they begin to question whether or not they even saw the thing. And then all this weird shit starts happening, and then they're like, oh, well, you're just country folk. You're idiots. We're not going to bother with you. So basically, science just abandons this because it can't explain it, and that's what makes it really that's what opens the door for this really horrific fantasy-esque thing. And it's funny because Lovecraft thumbs his nose in science in that story.
Well,
He's like
not really, because
he immerses it in as much scientific reality as he can, as by giving them, here's a rock that obeys no properties of Earth except it's magnetic and obeys the laws of gravity. That's all you got.
Well, the thing with that, it's not really fantasy because it's an element that human beings and this planet Earth has not experienced yet. So it's not really magic or anything like that. It's just an element. It's an alien element that's obviously from out there in space. So it's not magic. It's just an unknown element.
No, it seemed more like a fantastical element that was supposed to come from the same realm as Cthulhu, which is supposed to be in and of itself not necessarily full-on fantasy, but definitely not like scientifically explicable in the straightest of terms. He fiddles with the line really well, I think.
Yeah, I don't mind it being on the line. Like, a lot of people didn't like the Thor thing where they just gave a basic explanation that...
Well, where I come from, magic and science are the same thing. Okay, how the fuck are you able to lift a hammer that's apparently made out of star matter, asshole?
Because, the thing is with that, the thing with that, I just look at his abs. That's what I... I start questioning, then he takes off his shirt, and I'm like, okay, whatever.
That's pretty much what Natalie Portman did in that movie.
Yeah. Like, that doesn't bother me, because I can accept that there can be technology so far advanced. Like, imagine if we didn't destroy each other what we could do in a million years. Let's say civilization died at some point in his civilization. Maybe they don't quite understand the details of why. Maybe the hammer only responds to him. Somehow the hammer, the gravity's reversed, or not reversed, like
no, I get it. You can throw your explanations at it. That's fine. I'm just saying I wanted the movie to address it in a more realistic way. If I'm supposed to take it with Iron Man and say it's just as hard science as Iron Man, it's just alien technology. Because that's problem.
Well,
see, I know both of you are gonna. I know both of you are gonna harp on me for this. Both of you are gonna harp on me for this. But Green Lantern had a better basis in science fiction than did Thor, and Thor was trying harder. Because Green Lantern establishes this is alien technology that you'll never be able to understand. But basically, we have this power source. It powers your charger, and then the charger in turn powers your weapon. Okay,
I thought they
fine.
did pretty much the same thing with Thor. It's clearly
No, Thor
some
just
type
says
of
no.
nanotechnology.
Thor explains what a wormhole is, and then says magic and science are the same thing. That's it. That's the only thing they explain is the wormhole. Everything else is just up in the air. They don't even bother to try to explain anything else of how it's working. They just say, well, magic's just science we don't understand yet. Okay, please elaborate.
How can they elaborate any more than that?
No,
like,
even
what
if
could
like
they
Natalie
say?
Portman, even if Natalie Portman had just been like, well, maybe the hammer. Even if Natalie Portman had just said what you said 2 seconds ago, I would have been happier than I was with that movie. Because
Yeah.
like I don't mind
I
if
think
Thor's.
the problem is that
I would not mind if Thor was 100% fantasy. That'd be fine with me. But if you're going to say it's science, then you've got to do science.
well, the problem with that is that if they did that, then people would not have tolerated it. The reason they wouldn't have tolerated it is they were risky trying to explain it, trying to even suggest. I thought they did good because remember they have to. When you're making a thing like that, they did a lot to try to stay close to the actual Thor in style. Once you add in magic, because they were trying to not do any magic with the series, they really could have fucked up Thor if they had gone more science with it. Because, like, frost giants, the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, things like that. How does that even work? But they had to walk a thin line, and I'm sorry, but with Thor, it's clear where they needed to lay on the line. If they had gone into any more effort to explain stuff, the people who wanted Thor to be fantasy would not have been able to tolerate it. The backlash would have been so intense because Thor is supposed to be a Norse god. Basically, he's just straight up magic. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I'm just saying I didn't like that they didn't try harder. I had a problem with them. Like, I don't like it when science fantasy just says, oh, science and magic are the same thing, and then just is fucking done with it. You know, I like Doctor Who because it takes these, like, incredibly scientific fantasy world ideas, and it actually does a pretty good job through analogy of, like, explaining it, and sometimes to comical effect. I remember my favorite episode, The Doctor's Wife. The Doctor's on this, it's essentially a junkyard planet that is outside of the universe. And his assistants are asking questions like, so wait a minute, if we're outside of the universe, then where are we? Well, you know, sometimes when there's a bunch of bubbles, and one bubble will have a little tiny bubble on top of it, so it's like that? No, not at all, but if it helps, sure. I just really like that.
Yeah, that's awesome, because that's actually, yeah. That's awesome.
I really like when he does stuff like that. You don't have to give an explanation, but you have to at least give an attempt for me to be able to somehow wrap my brain around it if you're going to say it's science-based. You don't have to give what the real explanation is. Even if it had been Natalie Portman talking to Thor. Like, alright, there's that scene where Natalie Portman and Thor are in the car, and it's worthless because all she does is damn near drive off the road with her googly eyes, which I got really tired of. There's that scene where they're in the car. Why wasn't she like, so you're Thor, what's your hammer made out of? It's crafted from dying star material. Well, how would you lift that? It'd have to have, like, gravity reversal around you or something. Like, if she'd just been theorizing the entire time, trying to justify it within her own mind, since she was a fucking scientist...
Yeah, okay, I will give you that. It is odd that a scientist didn't ask many questions. The only thing I could think is kind of a cop-out, that maybe she was much more in love with him than we thought, and she literally could not think of anything else. But even that...
Well, no. You know what she could think of? She could think of Thor's hammer.
Yeah.
And the hammer isn't the hammer, it's his penis.
She could do that. That is a thing she could do. Hold on.
Anyway.
Let me mention one more thing. In terms of fantasy, and in terms of trying to prove science wrong. There was this movie called The Reaping, and yes, it had to do with religion, but let me just say, you know how Exodus, the explanation for the water was, it was a chain reaction. A volcano erupted.
Yeah, I've heard about the scientific explanation for that.
Yeah, well, there was, in the Reaping, there's a woman who, what she does is she goes to places where that happens, where the rust deposits cause the plagues to happen, and she explains it to the people and helps them survive. Basically the movie, did the normal thing where it shows it can't be science, blah-de-blah-de-blah. It's actually a sort of doomsday prophecy thing, and the normal stuff happens. However, the reason she's disproving that is because when she was in Africa, some witch doctors took her little girl and basically sacrificed her because of how bad things were. They blamed it on the white people. And because, the witch doctor was going to be killed because they were saying, well, you must be a bad witch because of this drought. So he's like, no, it's the white people that are here doing research. So, they took her little girl and they killed her. Now, I'm going to spoil this movie, but whatever. It's just a random horror movie. At the end, she's with the new little girl that you thought was bad, but is actually good. And she's basically on top of her, about to kill her. And you realize at that point that the other people who were trying to stop the little girl are actually the bad guys. And she's trying to... The little girl is basically not using her powers to stop her. She's saying, you have to decide. And she's like, how do I know which one of you is right? And then she's like, you have to have faith. It's like, what? Okay, and that's not the worst part. After that, when she sides with the little girl, she says to them, you're just like the people who killed my daughter. You're a bunch of people who don't have any faith. What? The people who killed your daughter had faith. That's why they did it. They killed your daughter because they had faith in their voodoo god. Why does it change it? Because it's the Judeo-Christian God. Why? Like, that is Orwellian in its nonsense.
Yeah, alright.
Yeah, that is just so incredibly annoying because it's just like, it's I don't know, maybe it's because of the Western,
yeah, it's definitely gotta be that.
Yeah, because you have to give lip service to the Christian God, or else, America won't show your movies.
Oh, shut the fuck up. We had the goddamn God Delusion series play around here and shit. Don't give me that.
No, I understand. I
books
understand. Hold up. Let me respond to that one. What he's saying is, pretty much every single thing, like, I can't think of one show where I saw and someone had a near-death experience, and they, except for Star Trek, ironically, and they always imply that there's an afterlife, no matter what, and it's almost always something close to the Judeo-Christian concept of an afterlife.
House.
Except, again, House. House is remarkably...
It's just the exception. It's the question. It's the exception that proves the rule.
The exception to the rule, and that's okay. It's okay because it's changing little by little.
Legal.
Boston Legal. God, that was an amazing show too.
Yeah, I'm just like, you can say that, but it's what you're talking about is the show's writers. I don't like the idea that it's appeasement. No, people are going to write about what they want to write about, and if they're Christians, they're going to want to write Christian fiction.
Oh, yeah.
I refuse to believe it's like the American culture and appeasement.
Well, no, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is they'll write what they think people are going to watch. Like, I don't think it was appeasement either. I mean, there are some specific examples where I can definitely see that it could have been if it's like written hastily in or something. But I don't think it's appeasement. I think it's just it just gets annoying to see it everywhere because again, it invalidates a lot of what you're seeing. Like,
okay.
Because like if that's the case, why is it sad when the characters die? Okay.
Well,
sorry.
I don't know. I still think like that's one of the things like I've always found odd for criticism of religions. Just like, well, if you think there's a heaven, then why are you sad when people die? I'm like, because you don't get to see them anymore.
No.
I mean, like it's a funny joke. It's a funny joke when the guy says, "If you think there's a heaven, why the fuck are you wearing a seatbelt?" But that makes me laugh. And I always found that like criticism odd. Like you still don't get to see that person. I mean,
yeah, no,
you can't be sad that's happening.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
It's like the West Wing. I kind of get where you're coming from with this idea of appeasement, but I don't know. There's this scene in the West Wing that I found interesting when the Jimmy Smits was playing the president-elect, or at this time he was the Democratic nominee and candidate. And he's campaigning, and he's at a school that's been debating whether or not to have intelligent design taught. And one of the reporters of the paparazzi asked him, "Sir, do you believe in intelligent design?" And he says, "Well, I believe in God, and I'd like to think he's intelligent." And then everyone thinks it's like a flub. But then he's in a classroom later that day at another school, another state, and someone gets up and asks him, "Sir, do you believe in evolution?" He's like, "Yes, I believe in evolution. It's essentially a fact. I mean, it's everything but a hard fact as much as 2 + 2 = 4. And then he's like, "But do you believe in God?" He goes, "Of course I believe in God." "Well, then why don't you believe that intelligent design should be taught in our classrooms?" "Because it's not a scientific theory." And he goes and gives like a great politician answer that appeases both sides. So I mean, I guess I see where your idea of appeasement is coming from there, Milan, but I still find it. I think that's an oversimplification. I mean, people are going to write about what they want to write about. I mean, yes, you can probably say, "Oh, movie studios will make you like appease one side or the other." Fair enough, but I mean, I don't believe that's really.
Yeah, I don't think it's
affecting every single movie out there.
Not every single movie.
But
the thing is, for films that don't focus on such a thing, because if you have like superhero movies, they don't really focus on like, hey, Christians and atheism. But if you're going to have a movie that, or a TV series that wants to get the largest amount of people interested in it, or doesn't want to offend anybody, they're going to go to the Christian answer, obviously.
I guess, but that's I mean, most of the country is Christian. I don't see why that's a problem, but okay. I mean, if the show's writers are Christians, and most of the country's Christians, then they share an opinion, and I don't see why they wouldn't go with that, but okay. I mean, there's a difference between appeasement and standing on the soapbox preaching your message.
There is a difference. What I wasn't suggesting that it's appeasement. I was just saying it gets annoying after a while, but
yeah,
I imagine that would be the case with everything. You know what I mean? If you have a different opinion of what is the case, it just.
I mean, like, hold on. I just want to just follow me down a rabbit hole real quick. All right, so we're watching some shitty television series on ABC, and a character dies, or a character dies for like a minute and then comes back to life. And then they ask him, "What did you see? What did you see?" And it's like in this middle American small town, and he's like, "Krishnu." How fucking weird would that be?
Yeah, no, that would be weird. No, what I'm saying, I'm not actually describing that, because that I would be surprised if he didn't see his deity. That's just how the human brain works. What they always do is they put something in there to where he couldn't have known that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they always put a thing where, even, again, except for things like House, and it is changing. It's changing. It's actually closer to what you were saying, Ian. It's changing with the demographics. The people who write the shows are increasingly less religious, so that's what we're getting. I agree that that's why. For instance, a show my mom watches all the time, and I don't have a room, so I always end up seeing it, is Grey's Anatomy, where...
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. Well,
your mom watches hospital porn, too?
Yeah, she...
Like, hold on, let me just ask you this real quick. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, Alec, but would you feel comfortable if your doctors in the hospital you were staying in, being treated for whatever, would you feel comfortable if they were all sleeping around in, like, fucking broom closets and shit while they're supposed to be taking care of you?
Yeah, no, that's not... Basically, everyone on that show acts like a teenager. Yeah, that's
right?
really what bothers me. They act like the drama... They're not smart people. They really aren't.
Well, like, that and just one other thing about Grey's Anatomy. They did an episode a couple years back. Now, hold on, let me talk about this first. Alright, so Scrubs was on for years before Grey's Anatomy. And it follows the format of, you know, you got the main character most of the time narrating what's going on in his head, and at the end of each episode, there'll be a couple plot lines throughout the episode, and at the end of each episode, he'll, like, give this narration, and it'll show shots that really tie all the narratives together, right? And it'll be this, like, overarching narration. And then Grey's Anatomy comes on, and Scrubs has the balls to point out that Grey's Anatomy is just a more serious version of what Scrubs is doing, and to the point where Zach Braff at one point says directly, "Oh, I love Grey's Anatomy. It's like they've been watching our lives and put it on TV." And Dr. Cox says, "Are you trying to use a narrative to tie up all these different storylines? I hate shows that do that." Like Grey's Anatomy. And like, that's really comical. But then you look at that Scrubs does an episode where they're all singing the entire time because one character is hallucinating.
I actually love that. That was an amazing episode. I love that.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, a couple years later, Grey's Anatomy does an episode where everyone's fucking singing.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Nah, it really is sad.
I'm sorry, go on, man.
No, it was just a thing where she had an near-death experience, and she learned stuff she couldn't have known unless she was actually simultaneously in heaven with some other people who told her stuff. And she came back and she knew this stuff. And they always do that. They add in the little thing where they can't just leave it. They can't leave it vague. They can't say, no, they have to add in something so that, secretly we all know it's actually real. It's like, I like it vague. If you're gonna,
all right.
Yeah, but yeah, let's
kind of get off of this because we're beating this to the fucking ground.
I just like guys. Sure. This is if I ever make a show and I ever get a chance to do one of those scenes, it's like the guy wakes up, gets brought back from the dead by like this defibrillator or something like that, and the guy's like, "What did you see? What did you see?" And he just looks at him like with this dead-eyed look and says, "There is nothing but oblivion. There is no God. There is no afterlife. It's all a lie. It's all a lie." And I'm all right with that. It just goes on his way.
Okay, we're beating this in the ground. It's really not as related to the topic as I would like it to be.
It really isn't. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. All right, so like we were talking about like plots and fantasies, and that's the thing. What turns me off about most fantasy is it's usually really good character stuff. Like Lord of the Rings is amazing character stuff. Harry Potter is amazing character stuff. But the plots are more about, like, every season, every book of Harry Potter is about get or find this thing to stop Voldemort this time. Mm-hmm. And Lord of the Rings is all, of course, about, to quote Kevin Smith here, walking to a fucking volcano. And that's fine, because it's all about the characters and the world building around it. That's fine. The fantasy that I really do like is stuff like Game of Thrones, where there's all this world building and all these characters, but it's about the political intrigue. Like there's fucking magic and dragons and shit in Game of Thrones, but those are just fucking different. Those are like nukes. You know, those are just like warheads that these people got sitting there. They're not about like.
Me. I need to see Game of Thrones. I haven't seen it, but
you do.
Yeah,
you fucking do.
I know. The reason I was
like hang up right now and go watch.
Wait. The reason I was waiting is you're gonna hate me for this, but when there's a really, really good show like that, I like to wait until they have like 3 or 4 seasons out. So when I start watching it, yeah, I know, which is why soon I was gonna start watching it. As soon as I finish watching the 1 or 2 things I'm finishing up, Game of Thrones was literally the next thing I was gonna watch. But anyway, what I was gonna say was that handles fantasy the way I like sci-fi to be handled. Sci-fi to me is almost not a genre. It's a setting. It's like, let's say you're watching a Western. You could be watching a Western love story. You could be watching a Western cowboy movie. You could be watching a Western, what would it be called? Like the Grapes of Wrath wasn't really a Western, but let's say it was set 100 years before that, and it was just about the family surviving. I don't know what you call that. You could be watching a slice of life Western. Same with sci-fi.
Little House on the Prairie.
Little House, yeah. Same with sci-fi. To me, sci-fi is best when it's more of a setting, or when it's totally about the sci-fi, hard science fiction, like Ghost in the Shell, or Space Odyssey. Something like that.
You know what's weird? I don't know why, at least I can't think of one. Has there been a series of like a sci-fi show where it's just like basically just a family in a futuristic society, kind of like a sitcom in a futuristic society? Has that happened?
No, and the reason why that hasn't happened is to do credible sci-fi, it costs money. It simply does. That's the same reason why there hasn't been a sitcom family of something like in Lord of the Rings. It just doesn't.
That'd be
fit.
hilarious, though.
It costs
oh my god!
Too much money. You know.
Well, there was a short-lived series on Comedy Central, and if the writing had been better, it would have been brilliant. It was like that Dungeons and Dragons kind of epic quest shit in like the fantasy world.
Was it called
Sword and Shield? What?
Was it Crod Mandoon?
Like with the flaming sword or some shit like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that was a great premise, and it had legs.
I thought that was hilarious.
There are parts that made me laugh, and other parts that were just,
Yeah, it was like in the middle, sort of. Nah,
yeah,
I get what you're saying.
I don't know, I would like to see, like, a futuristic, like, sci-fi, like, really far future, like, Star Trek level, sci-fi show that's just kind of like a goofy sitcom. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think I've had this conversation with Bionic Dance, actually. Was it Bionic Dance? I forget who it was, but yeah, I was like, why don't they have that? Oh no, she asked, why don't they have that? And I made a video response. It's generally because it's hard to imagine how that would make it any different. How do I say it? In order to justify the cost...
Imagine a sitcom set in the same universe as Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Bam! Instant money.
It's like, hey, would you like this toast made out of this thermonuclear reactor? Sure. Yum yum yum.
Yeah.
Now I have AIDS.
Well, that's the thing. That would be definitely a comedy, and it would be great. But I think comedy would be because you have seen comedy things set in sci-fi. Again, the sitcom
Red
thing
Dwarf,
is a problem.
Guys, Red Dwarf. Ian, if you want to see that kind of funny kind of sci-fi sitcom, check out.
I heard it was horrible.
It was really good, actually. It's really good.
I've heard nothing good. You're the first person I've ever heard tell me Red Dwarf is good.
It's really good.
Okay.
Well, the thing about it is, remember, I think, because I know there's been books like that, but books are not sitcoms. Books are not, weekly shows. The thing is it has to justify the cost. The sci-fi has to add enough difference it has to change the love formula and make it different enough to justify putting money into it. That's why we don't see like a Star Wars sitcom. It costs too much money to make it credible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and fair enough. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me if you can have sci-fi action shows and adventure shows like Firefly and Star Trek, you should be able to get away with a sitcom.
Those things actually justify it because...
No, I get that. I'm just saying if you can make the money off of those, I think if you had a good enough written show... Like, I mean, I think the closest thing, oddly enough, is the Disney Channel show Phil of the Future.
I love that show. That was a really great show.
I remember sitting with my dad watching that one day, and it was like the big season finale, and it was revealed that Phil fucked something up with the time machine, and that's why they were stranded in the past. And they were all, like, really disappointed in him, and, like, everyone was kind of shunning him. And then, like, within the last 2 minutes of the episode, the dad runs back into the room. He's like, oh my god, I just looked at some stuff. It turns out that if Phil hadn't made that mistake, we would have been stuck in a time storm and we all would have died. Phil saved our lives. And my dad just mutes the TV and looks at me and goes, who the fuck writes this shit?
That's awesome.
The thing with Phil in space, I really liked that show because there was this one episode where they actually explored gender issues, which was really kind of weird for a Disney cartoon to do. Because it was this weird, giant, like this round, tubbly-wubbly, purple alien thing that was non-gender specific. And basically the boys and the girls kind of made this bet because the alien species, they choose who they wanted to be, either female or male. And basically the whole episode is the girls and the boys just kind of taking this creature out on the town, showing it how cool it is to be like a girl or a boy doing girl and boy things. And basically, at the end of the episode, the creature said like, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you if I'm going to be a boy or a girl. You'll find out when I'll get a crush on you." And that is really weird because like Disney and gender issues.
That is pretty daring. I am surprised that Disney did that.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, no, like, I guess the more I think about it, I mean, I'm thinking live action kind of show, because, I mean, we have Futurama, which I still do love.
Yeah, that's why I said comedy is a little different. Comedy, you can have comedy anything. Like,
yeah,
I can't think of anything that has
I would enjoy a live action, Futurama, or a live action sitcom set in a sci-fi universe. I think you could have a lot of fun with it if you do it like Douglas Adams. Imagine a live-action Hitchhiker's Guide series. That would be fun.
You know what you're going to kill me for?
What?
I haven't seen the movie, Hitchhikers.
Well, the movie's not great. It has its moments. I really do love the robot in the movie. And you got to watch it just for the scene where they find out the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Just because...
It's like 13 or something, isn't it? Something like that.
No. All right. So it's honestly one of the best scenes in science fiction history. All right. So they build a giant supercomputer that they're gonna ask the question, and it's gonna use all its resources. It's connected to every other computer in the universe, and it's gonna figure out what the meaning of life, the universe, and everything is. So they ask it the question. It says, "I will need time to calculate this," and they go, "How much time?" 9 million years. And they're like, okay, we will return in 9 million years, deep thought, for the ultimate answer to the ultimate question. And so they come back, and there's like this giant parade, and you can see like some philosophers protesting because they're going to lose their jobs. And it's 9 million years later, and everyone's like so excited and so thrilled to find out the meaning of life. And it's like this giant spanning crowd that's covering the whole planet that the computer's on. And they sit there and they ask it, "Deep thought, we have asked you the ultimate question. Do you have for us the ultimate answer?" "Yes." "Deep thought, tell us the meaning to life, the universe, and everything." "Well, I would, but you're not gonna like it." No matter what the answer is, we'll be okay with it." "Are you sure?" "Yes, of course." Okay, the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. It's just the look of disappointment on everyone's face.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Like,
42.
that one scene is such the justification for just the way everyone looks so disappointed. And then they're like, 42. Yes, 42. Are you sure? Yes. How can the meaning of life, the universe, and everything be 42? Well, you didn't ask me the right question, so I had to figure out what the right question was, and now I'm sure that the answer is 42. Well, what's the right question? Well, I can't tell you that. You're gonna have to build another computer.
Oh my god. Oh.
Douglas
Yes,
Adams is
I
such
need
a
to
fun...
see it. I need to read that, actually.
The book's significantly better. Douglas
It's
Adams...
like, isn't it always?
No, it's... Douglas Adams has so much fun. There's some brilliant lines in that book, like, what he said hung in the air the way a brick doesn't. And there's a fish
That's
that
awesome.
you stick it... Yeah, you stick a fish in your ear and it's able to translate any language. And the guide has probably the best sections of the book. The guide tells you about the great philosopher and his conversation with God. And he's like, God, why will you not prove that you exist? Well, I can't prove that I exist because you must take my existence on faith in order to receive the award of heaven. Well, like, we have this example of this fish, which clearly proves you exist so that we can all communicate with each other. At which point God ceased to exist.
That's
Oh, that's so great.
Oh man, but what was I saying about plot? Oh yeah, so what I like it when fantasy does stuff with the plot that's more interesting than just let's go get this object or let's get to this area. And that's to be fair, that's a simplification. I get it. I like character development just as much as the next guy, but I prefer metaphorical based stuff. And and I think fantasy has a harder time doing that than does sci-fi.
Well, you know what I did notice? There is a weakness in sci-fi, and I said it earlier. Fantasy is almost always has a story that is very fantasy, like the quest to get something. That rarely, like, the only non-fantasy that's ever done that I know of are things like Harold and Kumar, quest to get to. But otherwise, you're watching fantasy, even if you set it contemporary. It would be hard for it not to be. It's like, this feels like a fantasy thing. Whereas sci-fi kind of goes the opposite extreme sometimes, and it bothers me, where the sci-fi really is just a setting. You're wondering, why does this have to be sci-fi? This is just basically a car movie, or this is just a basic action movie. Like, they have laser guns instead of shotguns. Ooh,
well, sometimes you need it to be sci-fi in order to justify like the gimmick or the you need it to be sci-fi. Like Looper has to be sci-fi. You can't have your future self. Oh, that's not the best. That's not the best.
That's not exactly. That actually does explore a sci-fi setting, whereas there are action movies that are just, I say sci-fi in quotations. Basically, sci-fi is so light. They could be in the most complex sci-fi world, but basically the movie is just like a gangster movie, and they very rarely delve into any scientific concepts.
Well, that'd actually be cool. I would love to see like a modernized gangster film.
Well,
like,
it's not even that almost. Like it just doesn't. It can get
like. Here's what I would like to see. I would like to see like a Tarantino like Reservoir Dogs style movie, but it's set in the far future. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
I would like that.
I like those too. Specifically, I'd kind of like to see that set because I like expanding universe. A lot of people are like, I want new. Hold up. A lot of people are like, I want a new IP. Whereas I always feel like creators make these beautiful, wonderful, complex, internally consistent universes and don't use them more than once. I would like to see more Cowboy Bebop, but not necessarily that character. Someone else in that universe. Or
yeah, I feel that way with Inception. What were you gonna say, Milan?
The thing with that is just with certain with science fiction and just being nothing more than a setting, it's interesting. Like if they do incorporate hard sci-fi with genre, it would be, well, that's kind of a misnomer, but if you do happen to have see, sci-fi and fantasy are sometimes very similar because there's always got to be some sort of MacGuffin. See, with magic, with fantasy, it's always so much more simpler. The MacGuffin doesn't have to be explained. It's just like, it's the stone of ages that does a thing. But for science...
that's a great way to put it, but you're right. That's exactly
Yeah, exactly. But with sci-fi, you
No, Milan, please say that again, but make it sound all epic and shit.
What did I say? No,
it's the stone of ages and it does stuff.
Okay. It's the stone of ages that does a thing. Anyway, with sci-fi, you also get the intellectual intrigue of like, this thing has some sort of basis in reality. Sure, it's like technology that we might get if we don't destroy ourselves, but it's funny because if you do have a really textured, really well-developed world, and you're just gonna go with like a basic bank heist movie, and it's just like, hey, we're gonna do this normal everyday thing that wouldn't stand out in any other time period, but we're just gonna have a flying car instead of a normal getaway car. I think that would be wasted, and that's why I'm really interested in new IP, because when writers do create this really complex world, but and use kind of very basic genre fiction to expand it, I just think it's kind of wasted, because if you do have this really large, expansive world in sci-fi, you want the viewer or the reader wants you to explore it and not just to retold.
Exactly. If you make me fall in love with the world, I want to see more of it from different perspectives that have nothing to do with the original thing.
Exactly, because then you're like kind of reliving, Mr. Campbell's, hero's tale, except with a different backdrop. You want the character to have some sort of knowledge in the world, because if the character interacts with the world in different and complex ways, then the world itself becomes more three-dimensional. And I mean, like I love those old 80s type of sci-fi movies where, like, Blade Runner. Blade Runner is just an amazing...
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God. That it's just the world building in there. It's just like, in certain films where just like you don't care. It's like the camera like pans over like a city block or something, and you just want to sit there and just keep the camera stationary there and just watch what's going. Exactly.
Dredd, not the new movie. Judge Dredd, the one with Stallone in it.
Yeah.
There's an example of an action movie that does not really need to be in a sci-fi universe. Just needs to be in a kind of like a, you don't need flying cars in that movie. You just need like this weird society.
That's a good.
Just for some reason it's in the future.
That's a good example. It doesn't make. It's like, why is this set in the future?
Whereas the remake of it is actually, it has to be in the future, because otherwise you can't have this like society structured the same way unless it's so compact the way it is in that film. So yeah, there's a good counterexample of that.
Exactly.
Rebirth.
Exactly, because you see, the thing with Dredd is that 2000 AD, the comic book series, it's just, it's basically, it's a world that grew over time, and it is very wacky in places, almost like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it has that kind of pseudo quasi-fascistic take on it. And it is a large, really complex world with a lot of different facets. Because in like science fiction books and movies, it's all great, but with movies, it's kind of limited. Sure, you can get a few really good shots of the world, but in a comic book series, you get the best of both worlds. You get the great kind of, literary expansion of the story, but you also get kind of like the cinematic view of how things work. And if you have a long-running, like decades-long, like setting in this world, your ability to define and make this world more three-dimensional becomes amazing. Like 2000 AD is a fucking amazing comic book, and it's just such a well-defined world.
Okay. if you guys don't mind, Milan just made me think of something that I kind of want to close out on. Like, be the last thing we talk about before we announce next week's. Alright, so we've talked about sci-fi, we've talked about fantasy, we got way off somewhere, but that's okay, because here on Sid Part 2's channel, we embrace the tangent. What about when you take something that's from one element and introduce it into the other? And the movie I'm going to go to for this example is Reign of Fire, where you take dragons, which is very much, when you think dragon, you think bam, sci-fi, or you think bam, fantasy, right? You think knights fighting them and shit like that, right? But then you have Reign of Fire, and it's actually just these animals that have been hibernating for years and years, and they actually had to hibernate far underground and draw warmth from the Earth's core, so that you get the sci-fi explanation about why no one's ever fucking found one and shit. So you get Reign of Fire, which took a fantasy element and then made it a sci-fi, and made it in a sci-fi movie. That's really interesting.
Was it a good movie?
It is.
Reign of Fire is good. I like it. Christian Bale's
I haven't seen it. That actually makes me want to see it.
Yeah, Christian Bale's in it. It's got this, oddly enough, the image I like from it the most isn't even a film-like scene or anything like that. It's such a simple thing. They show the cover of Time, like, as these events are unfolding. They show the cover of Time magazine in this fictional world, and you see dragons burning down New York City. It's just like a still image like that a photographer would have taken, and you see dragons burning down New York City. It's really cool. But then I'm trying to think if there's something that's done it the other way around, where, like, something that you're usually... Oh, here we go. You got elements that are usually, like, 9 times out of 10, you're going to think, okay, that's sci-fi's territory. Time travel. And then you see it happen in fantasy. Case in point, Harry Potter 3.
Yes, the best out of all my... Okay, that was a fucking amazing movie. Even my dad, who doesn't give a shit about Harry Potter, was like, that is an excellent movie. Yes. Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying about the plots in sci-fi, how they seem to be inherently better most of the time, because that is a very sci-fi plot, and you add just a plot to something like Harry Potter, and what you have is something amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, they do a pretty good job of making it magical, and I always felt J.K. Rowling's explanation about why you couldn't time travel after that point in the series was kind of weak, but whatever. The time turners... Alright, you remember in the 4th or the 5th one, where they have that big... Yeah, this is the 5th movie. Where they have that big fight in the Ministry of Magic?
Yeah.
And what's his name dies?
Yeah, and Snape, or not Snape, fucking...
Sirius.
Harry Potter's stepdad. Sirius Black, thank you. He dies. Yeah, during that fight, in the book, I don't know if they mentioned it in the movie, but in the book, during that fight, all the time turners, which are kept at the Ministry of Magic, are destroyed. So that's, okay, kind of weak. Seems like maybe someone would keep one.
Yeah, it's kind of a cop-out.
But fair enough. I mean, I guess they'd be heavily regulated. If there was time travel, I guess you'd heavily regulate it. I find it odd that they give it to a girl so she could take classes, but okay.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like...
Well, the thing with that, it was really kind of... Like, the thing with that is, it was kind of just Miss McGonagall, the teacher, kind of... Like, it was kind of illegal for her to do that. It's like, here you go, sweetheart.
They mentioned later in the series that you could apply for a time turner so that you can take more classes. Which is one of those weird things, like, wow.
It's like, it would be like the Nuclear Proliferation Committee letting you apply for a nuclear weapon just for chemistry research. Or
right.
Like physics. Like, that could destroy the world. You know what I mean?
Right. No, fair enough, but whatever. I'm assuming there's some kind of hard limit built into the damn thing, but fair enough. No, it's just one of those... Hold on, I gotta mention this, because Cracked, I think, probably have the best take on what's really fucked up about Harry Potter. Okay, so... Hogwarts is considered the a #1 best school for learning magic. All right, in the entire fucking world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you go in when you're 11. And from that point on, all they teach you is magic. And at least 1/4 of the kids that go there are probably gonna be evil. So you have an evil 11-year-old with untold levels of power. You have an evil person with untold levels of power that has an 11-year-old's understanding of how the rest of the world works.
That's true.
It's weird. It's weird because they, like, even the fucking adults in the wizarding world, they're like, hey, how does a toaster work? Oh! I mean,
right? That's true. They don't understand.
Like, they don't know what physics are. Like, they don't understand the basic laws of physics that you have to learn, like, in 12th grade or whatever. They don't understand chemistry. You know, that's problematic, I think.
Well, they do call that muggles.
Oh.
My brother told me, I asked him, and he said they call that muggle studies, and that they do have classes like that. They learn the
I read all the books, and I swear to God, no one ever talked about math class.
Yeah, Chris told me they mention it once. They just say Muggle studies, and that's supposed to be, J.K. Rowling said, that's basically her answer to, are they learning spelling? Are they learning math? And it's, yeah, they have just under one class called Muggle studies, where they learn the basics, and it's up to the parents.
Oh, come on. I don't care. That explanation does not exist, because my topic of conversation right now is funnier.
No, I get you. There's no way you can condense all that into one class. They basically must have, like, an elementary school understanding, and it's up to them to learn how. It's like, school didn't teach me that, but they taught me.
No wonder these fucking people elected. No wonder these fucking people elected a government that just got taken the fuck over by the evil dude.
Evil dude that they helped train, by the way. Like, you're allowed to be evil in Slytherin. Like, what do you mean that that's just how the house...
They fucking encourage it, dude.
Yeah, they're like, every single bad wizard has come from Slytherin. It's like, well, then you need to fucking shut down Slytherin, or at least have some educational form. Imagine they did that at Harvard. It's like, oh, everyone in Omega House becomes a serial killer. It's like, what?
Well, guys,
everyone in Omega House becomes a serial killer. Are you out of your mind? That's so not allowed.
Okay, before I forget this one point, I like stories where you have this fantasy like Fred, and you used technology, like in modern day type of scientific method to try to fight it. And the greatest example of this is, the original Dracula novel. I mean,
I was gonna say Ghostbusters.
Well, yes, that too, but you have the most traditional way is Dracula, because that's the whole thing. You get this old world, mysterious, kind of magical threat, and they're fighting it with typewriters and shit. Like, hypo needles and modern technology, quote unquote. But see, that's
Have you ever seen Dracula Dead and Loving It?
Yeah, I have.
No.
I love that movie.
You know the scene where Mel Brooks stakes the bitch and just gets fucking covered in blood?
Uh-huh.
I love that. I just, every time I think about Dracula, that's where my head goes now. She must have just had lunch. I'm sorry, Vaughn, go on.
But the thing I really like, the blending of both sci-fi and kind of fantasy, is in sort of sometimes in cyberpunk. I mean in steampunk. I mean, you have the kind of magical, kind of quasi-Edwardian setting, except you have a level of futuristic technology that's kind of anachronistic to the time period. And there's always some sort of weird magical element in steampunk, but it kind of fits because it's such a weird, world that doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's like you got these giant steam-powered, robots and whatever, and airships, and it just kind of weirdly fits. I mean, I don't mind when magic is used in steampunk too often, but I like steampunk that doesn't have any magic at all.
Can I mention anime right quick? Because Eastern culture does that a lot, and they do it well.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. They blend sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah, since like Final Fantasy VII. That's why it never bothers me when they're mixed. To me, that just seems natural. Like, why would science stop if magic existed? Why would that?
Well,
why would no one use?
Okay,
guns?
I'm sorry. I gotta mention this. It's supposed to be his worst movie. What's the Nostalgia Critic movie where they're all dressed up as fantasy characters?
To Boldly Flee, I think it is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's purported to be his worst movie, but here's the scene I'll have. Alright, so the main threat is that this ancient wizard who's the last wizard in existence is coming back, and he's gonna, like, destroy all science because he hates it, and he hates technology, and blah blah blah. And it's such a stupid joke, but it does work for me. He's right in the middle of this epic-ass battle with everybody, and then his phone starts to ring, and he pulls out his iPhone. It's like, no, I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back later. And he hangs up, and everyone's just looking at him. It's like, what the fuck?
That's awesome. He's like, I was gonna do mine last. That's great.
It is his worst movie I've heard, but I don't care how stupid that joke is. I do love it.
I am gonna have to go.
Okay, let's wrap up real quick then.
One more thing. I just gotta do a little recommendation thing. If for a great steampunk novel, I do recommend that you go check out Leviathan. It's basically taken. It's during the time of the First World War, except it's steampunk, and it's basically. It follows the son of Duke Ferdinand's. It follows Duke Ferdinand's son. It's kind of a, historical fiction if he actually survived, and went off to. Well, he existed and went off to have adventures, and there's some cross-dressing girl, Irish cross-dressing girl around that does stuff. And it's a great book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Milan recommends something. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. This was a lot of fun. Alec, thanks for coming on. I'm really sad that a special guest wasn't able to make it, and I'm mad at him. But anyway, it's okay. We'll survive without him. Mostly, the thing is, I wanted my friend Drew to come on because back when he was in high school, he helped out a friend of his with a film project for a book report where he was doing a book report on The Hobbit, so they dressed up in really shitty Lord of the Rings costumes, and Drew dressed up like Gandalf, but he just had fucking bathrobe and like a rag with a hole in it for a beard and this shitty-ass wizard hat, and he was carrying around a pool cue as a staff. I just wanted to use that clip for the damn intro. No. I just wanted that to be in the show. That's the only reason I wanted Drew on, and no, of course not.
I thought you kind of wanted him as a counterpoint to, because almost all of us lean more towards sci-fi.
That too, but still. That too, but honestly, I wanted him for so I could use that clip against him. And possibly that's why he didn't come on, because he knew I was going to use that, and he doesn't want it spread anymore. Anyway.
He will be punished for this.
Yeah, anyway. No, it was a good conversation, guys. Thank you both for coming on for this one. Alright, I talked to Bill, and next week, we're going to be discussing the Netflix original series, Hemlock Grove. Milan, do you think you'll be able to join us? Do you want to try to see if you can torrent that, or you think you're just going to bow out next week?
I don't know. I'll try to see it, and if I don't, then don't worry about it.
Alright, you know what, man, don't worry about it. You're busy lately. I'll find a third. Ladies and gentlemen, it'll be Bill, myself, and we'll have a special guest on next week to review Hemlock Grove for you. So everyone, thank you for listening. And until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Madman.
And I'm the Black Guy.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.